Good morning. I mean, I say morning because it's morning for me. I don't know what time you all are watching this. Um, I had a request to just talk about my table and my light a little bit. I don't know how interesting I can make this, so I'm also going to talk about other tables that I've owned just briefly. This is, I think I added up right. This is the fourth table I ever owned. And when I bought this house, about a year after I bought this house, is when I got this. The Diamond Professional is a model, 4.5 by 9, Pro Cut pockets, which means 4.5 inches here. Three-piece slate. When I first got this table, it was a red label diamond. And if you're familiar with those, right here, the diamond logo is blue. This is a blue label diamond. Before this, they had red label diamond. That's what this table was when I first got it. That's what they had. And it was also, that's what they played Derby City Classic with. It was 4.5 by 9 red label diamond professional tables. They moved on over the years, and I've kind of done my best to keep up. At one point, maybe about 2004 or 5, Diamond switched the rubber in the cushions from wherever they had to Artemis rubber. Don't really know what that means. It's a brand or a manufacturing process or something. And so the first chance I got, I had Artemis rubber put on the table. We took off whatever it was, and it played a little bit differently, a little bit more like what I would expect. I think I've told the story before where I've always wondered at Diamond when they first started making tables. I mean, those guys were pool players. Greg Sullivan was a great pool player, and they all had to have noticed that Diamonds bank really short compared to everything else that's out there. And I've just always been curious as what kind of a conversation did they have at some board meeting or something where they said, hey, these tables all bank really short. Did they decide, oh, we don't care, or we're doing the best we can, or whatever else? I had lunch with a Diamond employee several years ago at Derby City, and I tried to be as polite as I could and just ask him that. So I'm not knocking the tables at all. I'm just curious because they're different than Candy and Steepleton and Brunswick and everything. They bank shorter. And I really wanted him to give me an honest answer of what Diamond's philosophy was on that. And he looked at me, straight face. He said, Diamonds don't bank short. Everything else banks long. Okay, so he went into corporate mode, and that's perfectly fine. I've always thought that was interesting when diamonds weren't nearly as widespread as they're becoming. It was a definite difference, especially the red label diamonds. Now, as I said, this table's kind of evolved over the years. Around 20. Oh, when I bought it as well, when I got the red label diamond table, I had these 4.5 inch pockets shimmed down to 4 1/4. So a little bit tougher than what they played at Derby City Classic. In about 2015, they started playing with the blue label diamonds. And I wanted to keep up. And instead of buying a new blue label diamond table, I said, well, I just want to just replace what I can on this one and make this a blue label diamond. So, depending on how you look at it, this is not the same table I got in 2001. The cushions and the rails were replaced. This side skirt was replaced all the way around. And of course the pockets themselves. The slate and the frame and the legs are the same as they always were. but now this is a Blue Label diamond table. And this is just my understanding. I'm not a table mechanic or manufacturer or anything, but this is my understanding. See if I can even describe this. If you imagine that this is the point, the nose of the cushion. The table bed is like here, and this is the nose of the cushion. My understanding is basically to make a Blue Label diamond, they just rotate it a little bit. So the nose height is the same, but there's less rubber behind that point. Anyway, the tables bank much more like every other table on Earth instead of banking really short. And that's my understanding. And this table plays pretty much like the ones at Derby City now, although they don't use the professionals anymore. They use their smart tables, single piece slate, easier to move, easier to set up, things like that. I think they have more rail bolts. Like this one has 3 per section. I think there are probably 4 on the smart tables. It doesn't affect play, but sometimes I'll hit a ball, and of course I bank balls pretty hard. It sounds differently. It sounds different if I hit the cushion where there's a railboat holding it down or where there's not. Again, it doesn't really affect play, but it does affect the noise. And on the smart tables and ones at Derby City, no, I don't have that effect. When I had this stuff replaced with the Blue Label stuff, I said don't shim it. So this is just standard 4.5, not shimmed into 4 1/4 or anything. I've been playing a lot more one pocket, and the shims just kind of get in the way if they're not cut and installed perfectly. Balls around the pockets, they start interacting with that shim material and acting weird. So no, let's not do that. The tables at Derby City aren't shimmed, so I don't want mine shimmed either. That's the situation with the table. It's funny, pool tables, it's not like a car. You're expecting it's going to fall apart. You're going to have to buy a new one every 4 or 5 years. So this table's 25 years old now, and it's going to last another 25. I don't see why it wouldn't. I may not last another 25, but the table almost certainly will. The same commenter asked a question about this light. When I first bought this table, I got the light with it. I got some chairs over here with it. I got a Q rack with it. These were widely available. Widely. See what I did there? As wide as the table. There were 4 tubes, 4 8-foot fluorescent tubes in this light. They either stopped selling them or just didn't sell as many of them. And what you would get would be a much thinner light, same length, but much thinner. It'd only have 4 or 2 tubes, 2 8-foot tubes or 4 4-foot tubes. Anyway, this is the full width thing that they were making and selling back in 2001. I don't know when they stopped, if they even did stop. My local pool hall had this size lights over its tables as well until last year. They switched everything to the 3.5 by 7 smart tables and got new lights and all that. They're a much bigger league bar now than a pool hall. But yeah, the light is not. The guy said, "Well, what is your light turned sideways? It looks too wide." No, it's almost as long as it is as the table. It's almost as wide as the table. It's probably about the same dimensions as a 4x8 pool table would be. That's the story with that. So I think this is the 4th table I've ever owned. I'm going to just try to rattle through them really quick here. The first pool table I ever owned, me and my roommate in Omaha bought a 3x6 Fisher bar box from the 50s or something like that. Of course, it's still in the basement. It was a pool table. And I think it was the first one that my roommate ever had as well. Definitely the first one I ever had. And we just wore that thing out. Wore it out. Just playing all the time. When my ex-wife and I got back together for a while, I took that table down and had it crammed into the corner of the living room just so I could play. I couldn't walk around the table and play, but I could play from two sides and things like that. I really credit that table, that small size, with how good I was back then at maneuvering the cue ball around obstacles and into clusters and things like that. And I think it's because of that 3x6 table. In 2000, no, in about 1990, um, I didn't have a pool table anymore. My ex-wife and I had split up, and I was just in a little stupid apartment, and I didn't have a pool table, and it was sad. Um, I moved to Seattle, still living in an apartment, still didn't have a pool table. It was still sad. Eventually, in Seattle, there's actually Auburn, Washington, not Seattle. I moved into a townhouse. It was a 3-story townhouse, and down in the basement, I put a 4x8 pool table down there. And I remember going to my neighbor and telling him, hey, I got a pool table. I want to go downstairs and shoot as hard as I can. Please tell me if you can hear that, if it disturbs you at all. And I did that, and she said, nope, she didn't hear a thing. She was elderly, and that I'm sure helped. So I could play pool, in my own house again, and that was nice. Then I moved to Alaska, didn't have a pool table. Then I moved to New Orleans, didn't have a pool table. Then I moved back to Seattle, actually Kent, Washington this time, didn't have a pool table. Didn't have a pool table again until I bought this house. When I bought this house, there was a 4x8 back in that area. And I played really well on that 4x8. I played too well on that 4x8. I think it was a Steepleton model, which is like a local model around here. And the pockets were big. And like I said, the 4x8, and I was young and had good vision and all that. I used to play a game called Bowlingers, where I play 9-ball, and I would kind of score it like bowling. If I break and run, that's a strike. If I miss once and then complete it, that's a spare. Anyway, I had like 10 300 games in a row, and this is about 2001, early 2001. And I said, you know what? That table, while fun, was not challenging me at all. And I wanted to continue to improve, and so I got the 9-foot table, and that's the story of why I got the 9-foot table, and why I got the specific one I got is because I wanted to match what they played with at Derby City. And I think that's this video. I hope I didn't ramble too much. I probably did. I always feel like I did, but I'll put in some B cam footage that I just took of the light and stuff like that. So. Because you all only get this view typically. That's it, guys. Thanks.